There are going to be a ton of people on Louisville to go very far in the ACC and contend for an ACC championship this year in college football. There's a lot to like. We're going to break down the Cardinals today on the You Think You Know Sports podcast. We are making our way through the ACC in ABC order. We are to the L's where we're talking about the Cardinals. I hope you'll check out my website, youthinkyouknowsports.com. We've got 10,000 followers on TikTok, and we are trying to expand in other areas. So go check us out. You can get a full breakdown on the website. Look, the Cardinals went 9-4 last year. The ACC was a mess. We ended up with that five-way tie. Ended up with Duke and Virginia in the ACC championship game. Obviously, Miami is the team most remember that went on to represent the ACC in the playoff, even though they didn't even play for the championship and made the national championship game. Louisville beat that Miami team. And I remember on my daily live podcast on TikTok, or my daily show as I call it, I had told everyone this pass rush for Louisville gets after the quarterback. I think this is going to be a good game. Look, Louisville's defensive pressure really bothered Carson Beck. Didn't play well, and the Cardinals won in a very high-profile game. I believe it was a Friday night game. So Louisville has only had one 10-win season since joining the ACC. That was in 2023. But Jeff Brohm is 28-12 at Louisville and entering year four. The expectations are through the roof for many different reasons for this team. But one thing they've got to figure out is the quarterback, right? Last year it was Miller Moss, who was not what we thought he might be. 16 touchdowns, 7 picks. He has obviously gone to the NFL now. So now it's Lincoln Kienholz, who is transferred in from Ohio State. He only threw 14 passes. He's 11 of 14 with a touchdown pass. Also ran it 11 times for 66 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So Kienholz has not had a lot of playing time. So Louisville is basing this based on, he's the number 13 quarterback coming out of high school in 2022. He's got a couple of years of eligibility left. And look, he was at Ohio State, never was able to be the guy. Julian Sayin is obviously the quarterback there. So the talent is there. We believe the talent is there. He's thrown 36 total passes in his college career, though. So you're basing this on potential and hoping that this is going to be the right guy to replace Miller Moss. A couple things that stood out to me about Louisville last year. One is they were extremely balanced. They were almost 50-50 on offense, passing, and running, which is pretty incredible. Pretty incredible when you think about it. Moss was not great at throwing the ball down the field. He was 18 of 44 throwing the ball deep, 20-plus air yard passes, 5 touchdowns and 3 picks. Kienholz, you would think, is going to have to be better there. And he doesn't have the receivers in place that Moss had last year. Chris Bell is not there anymore. He's gone to the NFL. I believe he went to the Dolphins. Colin Lacey's gone. He had 60 catches. He's gone to the NFL. So they've brought in Trey Richardson from Vanderbilt, who had a pretty good year, 46 catches, over 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. They also brought in Lawayne McCoy from Florida State. Brody Foley, an all AAC, tight end from Tulsa, has also come in. He had 7 touchdowns last year and 37 catches. So, look, this passing game is certainly going to be a work in progress. One thing that we know very, very confidently about Louisville is they may have the scariest running back duo in the entire ACC. Isaac Brown led the nation last year with 8.8 yards per carry. He was almost a walking first down when he got the football last year. He had 101 carries. But his backup, Kewan Brown, was 4th nationally with 7.3 yards per carry. So you have the number 1 running back in yards per carry last year and the number 4 running back in yards per carry who are on this offense. They could score at any time. Usually you've got thunder and lightning. I think they've just got lightning and lightning because Louisville may be able to score on any pitch play, any off-tackle run. You never know. These guys are going to quickly be able to flip the field if Lincoln Kienholz and this offense can do enough with those receivers to keep Louisville moving and stay in front of the chains. But there's a lot to like here if you're a Louisville fan on offense. If you can figure out the receiving core if you can figure out if your quarterback is going to be what you want him to be here, and Kienholz obviously has the talent, then there's a lot to like. Now, one thing that you don't like, one thing you're not going to love if you are Louisville is your offensive line is going to be completely redone. You only have one offensive lineman back. That's Lance Robinson. 5 of their 6 most experienced offensive linemen are no longer on the team. And again, the receiving group, I didn't mention this stat, but I should. Top 4 in targets, the guys who had the most targets on the team last year, are no longer there. So that is a big change. They have 8 starters back on this team, only 30% in returning production according to CBS Sports overall. That's 105th in the country. 4 starters on offense. We named Isaac Brown. We did not name Trayshawn Hurry, who's coming back at receiver. Jaleel Skinner's back at tight end. So listen, maybe not guys who had huge years, but they're back, right? And we mentioned Robinson, the offensive lineman. Defensively, you got TJ Capers, Tayon Holloway, Clev Lubin, and Antonio Watts. Look, Lubin was the 3rd team All-ACC linebacker last year. Holloway was an honorable mention at linebacker. There's some talent to work with here. This was the number 4 pass rush team in grade according to PFF, and we talked about that early in the show today on the podcast when Louisville beat Miami, right? So we saw that pass rush for Louisville was a little bit underrated nationally most of the season. And I think, look, are they going to be as good this year at rushing the passer? Probably not. But even if they're halfway as good, Louisville is going to be a contender in the ACC. One thing I absolutely love about this Cardinals team is what they have got on the schedule. I absolutely believe the schedule gives them a chance to compete at the top of the ACC. They play Ole Miss on September the 6th. And look, that game is a neutral site game. That is a Sunday game in front of the whole country on Labor Day weekend, week 1. You can really change the way the country views your program if you can win this kind of game against Trinidad Chambliss and Ole Miss. Week 2, you play Villanova. The only thing I'll add about Villanova is I don't know of any Power 4 program in the country who's going to play a game, 2 games in 5 days this year, but that is what is happening with this Louisville team. They play Ole Miss on Sunday and Villanova on Friday, which is just weird, but it is what it is. Then they have 8 days before they play SMU. So, look, they get Ole Miss and SMU in their first 3 games. You could be 1-2. I mean, SMU is expecting to compete at the top of the ACC. They're expecting to win the ACC. There's no question in my mind about that with Kevin Jennings back and some of the talent they have back. That's a tricky stretch. You get Wake Forest the next week. You go to NC State October 3rd. You host Florida State on October the 9th. Again, another Friday game. So Louisville's only true road game, because the Ole Miss game is not a true road game, in the first 6 games is actually against NC State on the road. In fact, by the time we get through October, Louisville will have only played 2 true road games. Now, Ole Miss, again, that's in Nashville, but the other 2, NC State and Syracuse. Okay, I think NC State, the ACC feels pretty open after Miami, and with some of the guys they have coming back, they're going to be right in the mix as well. Going to Raleigh is not going to be easy, but NC State and Syracuse is your only road games before November. I think Louisville fans should take that. November the 6th, they play Georgia Tech on the road in Atlanta. Then they play at North Carolina on the 14th. They play Pitt back at home in Louisville, and then they go to Kentucky on November 28th. So 3 of their last 4 games are on the road. I think that is challenging, although the opponents are not the worst. Again, I think Pitt is going to be pretty competitive. I think North Carolina's got a lot to prove. We're about to get to our podcast on North Carolina. A lot of Kentucky fans are super excited about what's going on in Lexington this year. So I'm excited to talk about that. We've already done a podcast on Georgia Tech. Again, there's a lot for Georgia Tech to overcome without Haynes King this year, and with some of the changes they have had among their coaching staff as well. So, look, I think Louisville is set up to be pretty good. We're going to have to see what Lincoln Kienholz can be. This receiving core without Chris Bell, who I think was a little underrated nationally, is going to look a lot different. The offensive line is going to look a lot different. How much can Jeff Brohm get that unit to gel? And then Isaac Brown averaged 8.8 yards per carry. He's got to get more carries. Kewan Brown has got to get more carries as well. Both of those guys were right at 100 carries last year. Can Louisville continue to balance out that 1-2 punch with two of the most explosive running backs in the country? And if they can just get this passing game to be, mediocre to good, if Brown and Brown are averaging 7-8 yards a carry, then Louisville is going to be fine in most games. The pass rush obviously is probably not going to be quite as good as it was last year. But look, I think Leuven and Capers are good pieces there for Louisville and the ACC. And look, Jeff Brohm continues to win big at Louisville. I think that the sky is the limit here. The teams that aren't on the schedule, there's no Miami here, right? Miami's not on the schedule. Duke's not on the schedule, the ACC champion. Virginia's not on the schedule. They played a great game with Louisville last year. So I think the schedule sets up extremely well, especially if you get off to a 3-0 start. I mean, if you're 3-0 after beating Ole Miss and Nashville, you beat Villanova, and you beat SMU back in Louisville, you've got Wake Forest, NC State, Florida State, Syracuse, Stanford, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Pitt, and Kentucky in front of you. I mean, look, you talk about expectations going through the roof. It feels like a lot is on the line for Louisville in those first 3 weeks, and I cannot wait to see how this plays out for the Cardinals. Not a lot of travel at all either. They don't play at Stanford or at Cal, which I think is very important. Their furthest road trip, I believe, is Syracuse. I think most teams would sign up for that in the ACC. Guys, we are going through every team in the country. Right now, we're getting through the ACC. Next up is the Miami Hurricanes, and I know there are a lot of people waiting on that podcast, waiting on these videos, waiting on the blog post on the Hurricanes, who some believe are going to be the best team in the country this year. Hope you'll check that out. Go to youthinkyouKnowsports.com and read the blog, get the update here on Louisville, all the information. Can't wait to do the next podcast, and appreciate you guys for listening.